The door clicked shut behind her, and Elin Varell knew, immediately, instinctively, that she'd made a terrible mistake. She stood frozen in a book-lined study that smelled of leather and tobacco, staring at a man who looked like he could break her in half without shifting his weight. Duke Rowan Hale, the Wolf of the North, and he was staring right back at her with eyes cold enough to frost glass. Outside, the party continued. Laughter. Music. The clinking of champagne flutes among people who would shred her reputation like tissue paper if they found her here. Alone. With him. One wrong door, one moment. That's all it took to destroy a life. But here's the thing about falling. Sometimes you don't hit the ground. Sometimes someone catches you, and sometimes that's even more dangerous than the fall itself. This is the story of how a seamstress's daughter walked through the wrong door and ended up rewriting the rules of an entire world. Stick around until the end. Comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story travels. Hit that like button. You're going to want to remember this one. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. The Varell household occupied a narrow brick building wedged between a bakery and a cobbler's shop on the east side of Greymont, where the streets smelled like rising dough and boot polish. Not poor, not rich. Exactly in between, which was its own kind of prison. Elin had spent 22 years learning the precise measurements of that in-between space. How to speak clearly but not too boldly. How to dress well but not above her station. How to be smart enough to be useful, but not so smart that she threatened anyone who mattered. Her mother, Iris Varell, had built a modest reputation as a seamstress for minor gentry, good enough to enter their homes through the service entrance, never good enough to be invited through the front door. Elin had inherited her mother's steady hands and eye for detail. She'd also inherited something her mother didn't have, a sharp, restless mind that cataloged patterns in fabric and human behavior with equal precision. "Stop fidgeting with that hem," her mother said without looking up from the wedding dress spread across the work table. "You'll pull the thread." Elin dropped her hand. She'd been unconsciously picking at a loose stitch on her own sleeve, a nervous habit she'd never managed to break. "Sorry. And stop apologizing." Iris's needle flashed in the lamplight, quick and sure. "Apologies make you look uncertain. You can't afford uncertain at the Ashford estate tomorrow." Tomorrow. The Ashford Spring Ball. One of those glittering social events where people like the Varells were permitted to exist in the margins, delivering gowns, making last-minute alterations, being useful and invisible at the same time. "I still don't understand why you're not coming," Elin said. "Because Lady Ashford specifically requested you." Iris tied off a thread with a sharp tug. "She liked how you handled the fitting last month, said you had good instincts." What Lady Ashford actually meant was that Elin knew when to keep her mouth shut. During the fitting, she'd noticed that the dress had been designed for a woman 2 sizes smaller than Lady Ashford currently was. Rather than point this out directly and humiliate her client, Elin had simply suggested a modern adjustment to the silhouette that would be more flattering with current fashions. Lady Ashford had been thrilled. Crisis averted, payment secured, good instincts. "It's an opportunity," Iris continued. "Lady Ashford moves in circles we've never reached. If you impress her tomorrow night, she might recommend us to her friends. Real money, Elin. The kind that doesn't run out before quarter end." Elin heard what her mother wasn't saying. "We need this." Business had been slow. The rent was due. Her younger brother Thomas needed new shoes, again. The in-between space was getting narrower. "I'll make sure everything is perfect," Elin said. "I know you will." Iris finally looked up, her expression softening. "You're better at this than I ever was. You see things, people, how they work." It wasn't exactly a compliment, more like a statement of useful fact. But coming from Iris Varell, a woman who rationed affection like expensive fabric, it was close enough. The next evening, Elin stood in front of the cracked mirror in her bedroom, studying her reflection with the same critical eye she'd use on a garment. The dress was one she'd made herself, deep forest green with clean lines and minimal embellishment. Elegant enough not to embarrass herself, simple enough not to draw attention. She'd pinned her dark hair up in a style that looked effortless, but had taken 20 minutes to perfect. She looked exactly like what she was, someone trying very hard to belong nowhere in particular. "Good enough," she muttered, grabbing the garment bag containing Lady Ashford's emergency alterations kit. Her mother believed in being prepared for every possible wardrobe catastrophe. Elin had inherited that too. The Ashford estate sprawled across a hill on the west side of Greymont, where the streets were wider and the air smelled like old money and rose gardens. Elin had been here 3 times before, always through the servants' entrance, always focused on the task at hand. She'd learned early that the best way to navigate spaces where you didn't belong was to move with purpose. People rarely questioned you if you looked like you knew exactly where you were going. The ball was already underway when she arrived. Music drifted through the spring air, strings and piano, punctuated by laughter that sounded practiced and bright. Elin made her way to the servants' entrance, nodded to the staff manager who recognized her, and was directed to a small preparation room off the main hall where Lady Ashford would meet her. Except Lady Ashford was late. Elin waited. 5 minutes. 10. 15. She could hear the party beyond the walls, conversations rising and falling like tides, the clink of glasses, the swish of expensive fabric. She sat on a wooden stool, the garment bag across her lap, and tried not to think about how much she didn't belong here. 20 minutes. Maybe Lady Ashford had forgotten, or changed her mind, or found another seamstress who came from a better family and didn't require explanations. Elin stood. She'd give it 5 more minutes, then politely leave word with the staff and go home. No harm done. Another opportunity missed, but that was hardly new. That's when a young maid burst through the door, red-faced and flustered. "Miss Varell, oh, thank goodness you're still here. Lady Ashford is caught up with guests and asked if you could bring the alterations kit to her in the Rose drawing room, 3rd floor, east wing. She'll meet you there in just a moment." Before Elin could respond, the maid was gone, pulled away by some other crisis. 3rd floor, east wing. Elin had never been above the ground floor. The party noises were louder now, closer. She picked up the garment bag and stepped into the hallway, where everything was marble and gold leaf and paintings of dead Ashfords who'd probably never worried about rent. She found a servant's staircase, narrower than the main one, designed for invisible people doing invisible work. The 3rd floor hallway was quieter, lined with closed doors and soft carpet that swallowed sound. East wing. She turned left. Or was it right? The hallway branched in 2 directions. Both looked identical. Both could be east depending on how you oriented yourself. Elin stood at the junction, absurdly aware of her own heartbeat. Left feels right, she thought, which was exactly the kind of stupid logic that got people lost. She went left. The hallway continued longer than expected, the doors becoming more spaced out. These weren't preparation rooms. These were private chambers. She'd gone the wrong way. Elin turned to retrace her steps and nearly collided with a couple emerging from a room, both adjusting their clothing with the kind of guilty haste that told her exactly what they'd been doing. The woman, Lady something, Elin couldn't remember her name, froze when she saw Elin. Her face went from flushed to furious in an instant. "Who let you up here?" "I'm looking for the Rose drawing room," Elin said quickly. "Lady Ashford—" "The Rose room is in the West Wing, you stupid girl." The woman's voice could have cut glass. "What are you doing wandering around unescorted?" The man with her, definitely not her husband, based on the wedding ring conspicuously absent from his finger, looked annoyed at the interruption. "Just send her back down. Not worth the fuss." But the woman's eyes had gone sharp and calculating. "What's your name?" Elin's throat went dry. She recognized that look. She'd seen it on clients who'd found a loose thread to complain about, a reason to withhold payment. This woman had caught her somewhere she shouldn't be, and now she was deciding how much damage she could do with that information. "I should go," Elin said, backing up. "I asked you a question." Voices rose from the main staircase, more people coming up. The party was spilling into private spaces. If Elin got caught here, with this woman ready to make a scene, it wouldn't matter that she'd been following directions. The story would become whatever version benefited the people telling it. Elin did the only thing she could think of. She turned and walked quickly down the hallway, looking for any exit. Behind her, the woman called out, "Someone stop her!" Which was ridiculous. Stop her from what? Existing in the wrong hallway. But ridiculous didn't matter. Perception did. The hallway ended at a T-junction, left or right. Left or... A hand closed around her arm and Elin's heart stopped. Except it wasn't the angry woman. It was a young man in servant's livery, eyes wide with panic. "Not that way," he hissed, yanking her to the right. "Duke's study. He's not using it tonight. You can wait there until this blows over." "I don't—" "Trust me. Go." He shoved her toward a door, and Elin, operating purely on instinct and fear, opened it and slipped inside. The door clicked shut. Silence. The study was exactly what she'd expected a duke's private space to look like. Dark wood paneling, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a massive desk positioned near windows that overlooked the gardens. Lamplight cast everything in amber tones. It smelled like old leather and tobacco and something else she couldn't name. Power, maybe. Or just money. Sometimes they were the same thing. She pressed her ear to the door. Footsteps passed by. Voices. The angry woman was still talking, her tone shrill with indignation. Absolute cheek of these people. Elin waited. Her hands were shaking. She hated that they were shaking. The voices faded. She counted to 60, then another 60 for good measure. "Okay, time to leave. Get back downstairs, find Lady Ashford, or don't go home and try to salvage whatever she could from this disaster." She turned toward the door and found herself staring at a man who definitely hadn't been there 30 seconds ago. He stood near the desk, one hand resting on the back of a leather chair, watching her with an expression that gave away absolutely nothing. Tall, broad-shouldered, dark hair slightly too long to be fashionable, and those eyes, pale gray, cold as winter fog. Elin's brain supplied the information her survival instincts were screaming. Duke Rowan Hale, the Wolf of the North. Oh God, oh God, oh God. She'd seen his portrait in the main hall downstairs. Everyone in Greymont knew who he was. Frontier Duke, war hero, a man with a reputation for brutal efficiency and zero tolerance for bullshit. He owned half the Northern Territories and had supposedly killed a man in a duel over a land dispute. And she was standing in his private study, alone, uninvited. "I can explain," Elin said, which was a lie because she absolutely could not explain this in any way that wouldn't make it worse. Rowan Hale didn't move, didn't speak, just watched her with those unsettling eyes like he was waiting for her to finish digging her own grave. "I was looking for the rose drawing room," Elin continued, words tumbling out too fast. "Lady Ashford needed alterations. I went the wrong way. Someone chased me. A servant told me to hide here. I didn't know you were— I thought the room was empty. I'm leaving now." She took a step toward the door. "Stop." His voice wasn't loud, but it landed like a physical thing. Elin stopped. Rowan moved around the desk with the kind of easy confidence that came from never having to question whether a space belonged to him. He stopped a few feet away, close enough that Elin could see the faint scar cutting through his left eyebrow, the way his jaw was set like he was perpetually annoyed at the world. "You're the seamstress," he said. Not a question. Somehow he already knew. "Elin Varell," she said, because what else was she supposed to do? "My mother does work for Lady Ashford. I'm just here to deliver—" She held up the garment bag like evidence. "And you decided to tour the private wings while you were at it." "No, I told you, I got lost." "Lost." He repeated the word like he was testing its weight. "In a hallway clearly marked for family quarters, being chased by Lady Pemberton, who is now downstairs telling anyone who will listen that she caught an intruder rifling through rooms." Elin's stomach dropped. "I wasn't rifling through anything. I didn't touch—" "I know." She blinked. "What?" "I've been in this study for the past 20 minutes. I watched you stand by that door like a frightened rabbit. You didn't touch anything." He tilted his head slightly. "Which raises the question, why didn't you run when you had the chance?" "I did run. That's how I ended up here." "Before that, when Lady Pemberton confronted you, you could have explained yourself, apologized, made a scene. Instead, you ran. Why?" "Because apologies made you look uncertain. Because explanations didn't matter when people had already decided what story to tell. Because she'd learned early that sometimes the only way to survive was to remove yourself from the situation entirely. But she couldn't say any of that to him. So instead she said, it seemed like the best option at the time." Something shifted in his expression. Not quite amusement, but close. "Poor instincts." Apparently. Oh, Lady Pemberton is married to a minor lord with gambling debts and a drinking problem. She's sleeping with Lord Ashford's cousin. She has no power except what she can leverage through scandal, and you just gave her a perfect target. Elin's chest tightened. I didn't mean to. Intention doesn't matter. You're here. She saw you. By tomorrow morning, you'll be the serving girl who snuck into private quarters to steal jewelry or seduce someone above her station or whatever version of the story entertains people the most. He said it matter-of-factly, like he was describing weather patterns, like her entire life wasn't about to implode. So that's it? Elin heard the edge in her own voice but couldn't stop it. I'm just ruined, one wrong turn, and I'm done? In this world? Yes. The casual cruelty of it hit harder than if he'd been deliberately vicious, because he wasn't wrong. She knew he wasn't wrong. That's what made it unbearable. Then I guess I should go, Elin said quietly. Face it head on. Maybe if I explain to Lady Ashford won't protect you. She'll distance herself. Can't risk being associated with scandal, even secondhand. Then what exactly do you suggest I do? Rowan was quiet for a long moment, studying her with that unreadable expression. Then he said something that made absolutely no sense. You could belong. What? To me. He said it like he was proposing a business arrangement. If you're caught here because you're with me, it's not scandal, it's escort. You were brought here deliberately, guest, not servant. Elin stared at him. That's insane. It's practical. It's a lie. Lies are only problems when they're exposed. This one won't be. He moved back to the desk, leaning against it with his arms crossed. You have two options. Walk out that door and let Lady Pemberton's version of events destroy your reputation and your mother's business by association. Or walk out that door with me and let people think whatever they want about why you were here. The second version protects you. Why would you do that? Because I don't like Lady Pemberton. Because watching her try to explain how she found you in my study while she was actively committing adultery will be entertaining, because it costs me nothing and solves your problem. Pick your reason. Elin's mind raced. This was insane. She didn't know this man. He was a duke with a reputation for being ruthless and unpredictable. Accepting his help would tie her to him in ways she couldn't predict or control. But the alternative was everything her mother had built burning to the ground because Elin had turned left instead of right. If I agree to this, she said slowly, what do you want in return? Nothing. Nobody does something for nothing. Then consider it an investment in chaos. That almost smile again. I'm curious to see what happens. This was a mistake. Every instinct Elin had told her this was a mistake. But what choice did she have? Okay, she said. What do we do? Rowan pushed off the desk. We walk downstairs together. You stay close. Let me handle the talking. Don't apologize. Don't explain. Just follow my lead. He opened the door and gestured for her to go first. Elin picked up the garment bag with numb fingers and stepped into the hallway. The party was louder now, spilling up from the floors below. Rowan fell into step beside her, close enough that anyone watching would assume they were together. His presence was like a shield, or a target. Elin wasn't sure which. They descended the main staircase. Conversations dropped off as people noticed them. Eyes tracked their movement. By the time they reached the ground floor, a small crowd had gathered, trying very hard to look like they weren't staring. Lady Pemberton stood near the entrance to the ballroom, mid-conversation with a cluster of women. She went silent when she saw Elin. Her face cycled through confusion, recognition, and something close to panic. Rowan walked straight toward her. Lady Pemberton, he said, his tone polite and utterly disinterested. I believe you were looking for someone earlier. Lady Pemberton's mouth opened, closed. Yes, there was a girl, wandering the private halls. You thought correctly. Miss Varell was looking for me. I'd asked her to bring something from Lady Ashford. He glanced at Elin. My apologies for the confusion. I should have been clearer about where to meet. Elin felt every eye in the room lock onto her. She forced herself to stand still, to keep her expression neutral, to not apologize. I see. Lady Pemberton's voice had gone thin. "I wasn't aware you were acquainted with Lady Ashford's seamstress. Now you are." The silence that followed was excruciating. Someone coughed. Glasses clinked in another room. Then Rowan did something that changed everything. He placed his hand lightly on Elin's lower back, a gesture casual enough to seem unremarkable, deliberate enough that everyone noticed. "If you'll excuse us," he said, and he guided Elin away from the crowd, toward the terrace doors, leaving Lady Pemberton standing there with her scandal evaporating into thin air. Outside, the gardens stretched into darkness, lit by hanging lanterns that swayed in the breeze. The music was muffled here, softened by distance and leaves. Elin realized she was shaking again. "Breathe," Rowan said quietly. She did. Once. Twice. The air tasted like roses and impending rain. "What just happened?" she asked. "You survived." He released her and stepped back, putting professional distance between them again. "Lady Pemberton won't push the issue now. She can't without admitting where she was and who she was with, and anyone who asks questions will be told you were here at my request. Problem solved. For now." "For now," he agreed. Elin looked back toward the house where silhouettes moved behind lit windows. People were definitely talking about her, making assumptions, building stories. "They think I'm—" She couldn't finish the sentence. "They think you're someone I chose to spend time with. What they make of that is their problem, not yours." "Easy for you to say. Your reputation isn't built on being respectable. Neither is yours anymore." The bluntness of it should have hurt. Instead, it felt almost freeing, like a door closing on one version of her life and opening onto something else entirely. "I should go," Elin said. "Find Lady Ashford. Finish the job I came here to do." "She's in the west parlor, third door on the left from the main hall." "Thank you." Elin hesitated. "For this, for helping me, I don't understand why you did, but thank you." Rowan studied her for a moment, that unreadable expression back in place. "You're welcome. Try not to get lost again." "I'll do my best." She turned to leave. "Miss Varell?" She looked back. "You were right earlier," Rowan said. "About poor instincts. Running was the wrong move. Next time someone tries to corner you, stand your ground. People respect power, even when it's faked." "I'll remember that." "I hope so. You'll need it." Later, hours later, after she'd successfully completed Lady Ashford's alterations, politely declined questions about why Duke Hale had escorted her to the terrace, and made it home without further disaster, Elin lay in her narrow bed and stared at the ceiling. Her mother would hear about this. Everyone would hear about this. The seamstress's daughter and the wolf of the north. It should have terrified her. Maybe it did, but underneath the fear was something else, something that felt dangerously like possibility. She'd walked through the wrong door, and somehow, impossibly, she was still standing. 3 days later, an envelope arrived at the Varell household. Heavy paper. Wax seal. The kind of correspondence that made Iris go pale. "It's from the Duke," she said, staring at it like it might explode. "Rowan Hale. Why is Rowan Hale writing to us?" Elin took the envelope with hands that only trembled slightly. She broke the seal and unfolded the letter. The handwriting was sharp and efficient. "Miss Varell, Lady Cressida. Vale is hosting a dinner party next week. You will attend as my guest. Address will be delivered to your address tomorrow. Wear it. Arrival time, 7 p.m. A carriage will collect you. Do not be late. R.H. No explanation. No request. Just certainty." "What does it say?" Iris asked. Elin read it again, trying to find the trap, the catch, the angle. "I think," she said slowly, "I've been invited to dinner. By a duke." "Yes." Iris sat down heavily. "Elin, what did you do?" "I walked through the wrong door." And apparently, she was still walking. The dress arrived in a box large enough to contain a small child. Elin stared at it on the kitchen table like it might spring to life and devour her. "Open it," Iris said, her voice tight with something between excitement and terror. Elin lifted the lid. Tissue paper rustled. Beneath it lay silk the color of midnight, Deep blue so dark it was almost black, with subtle embroidery along the bodice that caught the light like stars. The craftsmanship was extraordinary. Elin's trained eye catalogued every detail: the hand stitching, the quality of the fabric, the cut that would require professional fitting. This wasn't a dress. This was a statement. "That's worth more than our rent for a year," Iris whispered. Elin touched the fabric. It felt like water, like money, like walking into a room and having every eye turned toward you whether you wanted them to or not. "I can't wear this." "You have to wear it." He sent it. Refusing would be an insult. Accepting it might be worse. Iris pulled the dress from the box, holding it up to the light. "This isn't some merchant trying to buy favors, Elin. This is a duke making sure his guest doesn't embarrass him. There's a difference." "Is there?" Her mother's expression hardened. "Yes, and you need to learn it quickly if you're going to survive wherever he's taking you." The carriage arrived exactly at 7. Black lacquer with the Hail crest on the door, a wolf's head surrounded by crossed swords. Subtle. Elin climbed inside, the dress whispering against her legs, and tried not to think about all the ways this could go catastrophically wrong. The driver didn't speak. The horses didn't slow. They moved through Greymont's streets like a blade cutting silk, and Elin watched her familiar world blur past the window. The bakery, the cobbler, the marker that separated her neighborhood from the ones where people didn't count coins before buying bread. They crossed that marker and kept going. The Vale mansion made the Ashford estate look modest. It sprawled across a hilltop like a small palace, all white stone and columns and gardens that probably required a full-time staff just to maintain. Light poured from every window. Carriages lined the circular drive, each one more expensive than the last. Elin's hands were shaking again. She pressed them flat against her thighs, feeling the silk bunch under her palms. The carriage stopped. A footman opened the door. Elin stepped out into a world that absolutely did not belong to her. "Miss Varell." Rowan stood at the base of the entrance stairs, dressed in formal black that made him look even more dangerous than usual. His expression gave away nothing, but his eyes tracked her movement with the precision of someone assessing a situation. "You're late," he said. "The carriage arrived at 7 exactly. And you should have been ready at 6:30 to account for traffic. You didn't put that in your letter." "I assume basic competence," Elin bristled. "If you're going to criticize everything I do, this is going to be a very long evening." Something flickered in his expression, there and gone too fast to name. "Fair point. You look acceptable." "Acceptable." "The dress fits. You're not wearing too much jewelry. Your hair is appropriate. That's more than most women manage." He offered his arm with the mechanical courtesy of someone performing a required social function. "Shall we?" Elin placed her hand on his sleeve, feeling the muscle beneath the fabric. "You could try being less charming. I'd hate for all this flattery to go to my head." "I don't do flattery. I do assessments. Yours happens to be positive." "I'm overwhelmed with gratitude." "You should be. Most people get negative assessments." They climbed the stairs together, and Elin had the disturbing realization that this felt almost natural. His pace matched hers. His presence created a bubble of space around them that other guests instinctively avoided. She'd been terrified of this moment for 3 days, and now that it was happening, the fear had crystallized into something sharper and more useful. Focus. The entrance hall was exactly as excessive as she'd expected. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, paintings of important dead people judging the living from golden frames. Guests clustered in groups, their conversations creating a low hum of practiced civility. Every single one of them turned to stare when Rowan and Elin entered. "Ignore them," Rowan said quietly. "Easy for you to say. They're going to talk regardless of what you do. Give them nothing to work with." A woman detached from the nearest group and glided toward them, tall, elegant, blonde hair piled in an elaborate style that probably required engineering. She wore ice blue silk and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Rowan, how unexpected." Her voice was honey over glass. "I didn't realize you were bringing a guest." "Cressida." Rowan's tone could have frozen water. "Allow me to introduce Miss Elin Varell. Elin, Lady Cressida Vale, our hostess." Cressida's gaze moved over Elin like a blade, measuring, cataloging, finding weaknesses. Miss Varell, I don't believe I've heard the name. No reason you would have, Elin said, keeping her voice level. I tend not to circulate in these circles. How refreshing. Rowan so rarely brings anyone to these functions. You must be quite special. The word special landed like an insult. Elin felt it, understood it, and made a split-second decision to match it. Or he's just bored with the usual options. Cressida's smile sharpened. Indeed. Well, do make yourself comfortable. Dinner will be served shortly. I trust you'll find the conversation educational. She drifted away, leaving a wake of expensive perfume and calculated menace. That was either very brave or very stupid, Rowan said. Which do you think? I haven't decided yet. He guided her into the main parlor where more guests congregated around a bar that could have serviced a small tavern. Elin recognized a few faces from the Ashford ball, people who'd watched her descend that staircase with Rowan 3 days ago. Their expressions ranged from curious to hostile. Wine? Rowan asked. Yes, please. He signaled a server, who appeared instantly with 2 glasses. Elin took hers and drank more than was probably appropriate. The wine was better than anything she'd ever tasted, which somehow made everything worse. So, she said quietly, what exactly is your plan here? Plan? You invited me to a dinner party hosted by a woman who clearly hates you, in front of people who are already building stories about why a seamstress's daughter is wearing a dress worth more than her annual income. There has to be a plan. Rowan studied his wine. Lady Cressida and I have a complicated history. How complicated? She wanted to marry me. I declined. She's been making my life incrementally difficult ever since. And bringing me here helps how? It reminds her that I don't take orders, even subtle ones disguised as social expectations. Elin processed this. So I'm a prop, a statement. You're a guest. What people make of that is their choice. That's a terrible answer. It's the only one I have. Before Elin could respond, a man approached, older with silver hair and the kind of face that suggested he'd never been told no. Duke Hale. I heard you'd arrived, and with such charming company. Lord Pemberton, Rowan said, his voice flat with disinterest. How unfortunate to see you. Lord Pemberton laughed like Rowan had made a joke. Always direct. I appreciate that. And Miss Varell, Elin supplied. Varell. Can't say I know the family. Which province? None. We're from Greymont, East Side. The smile flickered. How quaint. And what brings you into our circles? Duke Hale's invitation. Yes, but surely there's more to it than that. How did you two meet? Elin felt the trap closing. Any answer she gave would become ammunition, but Rowan had said to stand her ground, so she did. I walked through the wrong door at the Ashford ball. He was kind enough not to have me thrown out. Pemberton's eyebrows rose. The wrong door? How careless. It was, but Duke Hale was gracious about my mistake. I'm grateful for his discretion. Gracious. Not a word often associated with the Wolf of the North. Then perhaps people don't know him as well as they think they do. The words were out before Elin could stop them. Pemberton's expression shifted, surprise mixed with something calculating. Beside her, Rowan had gone very still. Perhaps not, Pemberton said slowly. Well, enjoy your evening, Miss Varell. I suspect you'll find it memorable. He walked away, already moving toward another group. Elin could see him leaning in, whispering, gesturing back toward her and Rowan. That was a mistake, she said quietly. Was it? I just offended you, in front of someone who's probably going to use it against both of us. Probably. Rowan sipped his wine. But it was interesting. Interesting. You didn't apologize, didn't back down, didn't let him define the narrative. I thought we were trying to avoid creating narratives. We're trying to control them. There's a difference. Before Elin could ask what the hell that meant, a bell chimed. Conversations quieted. Cressida appeared at the parlor entrance, her smile bright and terrible. Dinner is served. The dining room was designed to intimidate. Long table, high ceilings, enough silver and crystal to fund a small army. Place cards marked each seat with calligraphy that probably cost more than Elin's dress. She found her name between Rowan and an empty chair. He pulled it out for her, more mechanical courtesy, and she sat, trying not to think about how out of place she was. The empty chair filled quickly, a young woman with dark hair and sharp eyes. "Miss Varell, how lovely. I'm Lady Margaret Sutherland. You can call me Maggie. Everyone does." Her smile seemed genuine, which immediately made Elin suspicious. "Elin, I know, you're all anyone's talking about. The mysterious seamstress who's captured Duke Hale's attention. Very romantic." "It's not," Elin started. "Oh, I know it's probably not romantic at all. Rowan doesn't do romance, but people love a good story, so why not let them have one?" Maggie leaned closer, lowering her voice. "Fair warning, Cressida's going to try to destroy you tonight. She does it to everyone Rowan brings around. Not that he brings many. Actually, I think you're the first in 3 years, so congratulations on that." "That's not reassuring." "It's not meant to be. It's meant to be useful. Know your enemy and all that." Across the table, Cressida took her seat at the head. Her eyes found Elin's, and her smile promised violence wrapped in etiquette. The first course arrived, some kind of soup that tasted like money. Elin ate carefully, hyper-aware of every movement. Don't slurp, don't use the wrong spoon, don't draw attention. "So, Miss Varell," Cressida said, her voice carrying effortlessly, "I understand you're a seamstress. How fascinating. Tell us about your work." Every conversation stopped. 20 pairs of eyes turned toward Elin. "I help my mother with fittings and alterations," Elin said, "mostly for minor gentry. Nothing extraordinary. How modest, though I suppose when one works with one's hands, there's a certain practicality required." Cressida's tone made practical sound like a disease. "There is. Precision, actually. Understanding structure and form, making sure everything fits perfectly. It's not unlike architecture, really, just smaller scale. And yet here you are dining with dukes and ladies. Quite the elevation." The word hung in the air like smoke. Maggie jumped in. "Cressida, really? We're all elevated when we accept invitations to beautiful homes like yours." "Of course. I simply meant it must be overwhelming for someone unused to these environments, the expectations, the protocols, the history everyone else shares." Elin felt her temper rise, sharp and hot and dangerous. She could feel Rowan's presence beside her, could sense him watching to see what she'd do. "Stand your ground." "It is overwhelming," Elin said calmly, "but I find people are largely the same regardless of setting. Same insecurities, same need to feel superior, same capacity for kindness or cruelty. The only difference is how much silk they wear while doing it." The silence was absolute. Then Maggie laughed, a genuine, delighted sound. "Oh, I like her." Cressida's smile had frozen in place. "How astute." "I'm observant. Comes with the profession. You learn to see what people are really asking for, underneath what they say they want." "And what do you think people here are asking for?" Elin met Cressida's gaze directly. "Validation, mostly. Proof that their position is secure, that they matter." "And do you think you matter, Miss Varell?" The question was designed to trap her. Answer yes, and she was arrogant. Answer no, and she was weak. "I think everyone matters," Elin said. "Just not necessarily to everyone." Maggie actually clapped. Rowan's mouth twitched, the closest thing to a smile Elin had seen from him. Cressida looked like she wanted to throw her soup. Dinner continued with the momentum of a battlefield after that. Courses came and went, conversations rose and fell. Elin fielded questions about her background, her family, her friendship with Rowan. She kept her answers short, honest where possible, vague where necessary. Maggie turned out to be surprisingly helpful, redirecting the worst questions and filling awkward silences with cheerful irrelevance. Rowan barely spoke, but his presence beside Elin felt like reinforcement, a reminder that she wasn't alone in this. By the time dessert arrived, something involving berries and cream and entirely too much gold leaf, Elin was exhausted. Every muscle ached from maintaining perfect posture. Her face hurt from smiling. She wanted to go home, crawl into bed, and never see another aristocrat again. Then Cressida stood, tapping her glass with a knife. "Before we retire to the parlor, I wanted to share something special. A toast, if you will, to old friendships and new acquisitions. Her eyes locked on Elin. Rowan and I have known each other since childhood. Practically family, really. Which is why I'm so delighted to see him finally taking an interest in companionship, even if the source is unconventional. The room went very quiet. I mean, no offense, of course, Cressida continued, but I think we can all appreciate the novelty. A working girl dining with the Wolf of the North. It's quite the story. I do wonder, though, Miss Varell, what exactly does a seamstress bring to a table like this? Beyond curiosity value, I mean. Elin's hands were fists under the table. She could feel the room holding its breath, waiting to see if she'd break. Don't apologize. Don't back down. She stood. The chair scraped against marble. Every eye in the room tracked her movement. Rowan shifted beside her, but she was already speaking. You want to know what I bring? Elin's voice was steady, calm, deadly. Honesty. The ability to see a badly constructed seam and call it what it is, regardless of who's wearing it. The understanding that expensive fabric doesn't hide poor craftsmanship, it just makes the flaws more obvious. And right now, Lady Vale, your seams are showing. Cressida went white. How dare you? I'm not finished. Elin felt something shift inside her, some final barrier between who she'd been and who she was choosing to become. You've been testing me all evening, poking, prodding, trying to find a weakness to exploit. And I get it. I'm an easy target, low-born, unprepared, everything you're not. But here's the thing you don't understand. I've spent my entire life making sure rich people look good despite their flaws. I know every trick, every compromise, every lie you tell yourselves about why you deserve to be here. This is outrageous, someone muttered. It's honest, Elin shot back, which is apparently outrageous in this room. You asked what I bring to this table. That's it. The one thing none of you can buy or inherit. The ability to look at all of this. She gestured at the gold, the crystal, the excess, and see exactly what it is. Theater, performance. People desperately trying to prove they're worth the space they occupy. Enough. Rowan's voice cut through the room like a blade. Elin turned to him, expecting anger. Instead, she found something that looked almost like approval. We're leaving, he said, standing. Lady Vale, thank you for dinner. It was exactly as educational as promised. He offered Elin his arm. She took it, her hand shaking now that the adrenaline was fading. They walked toward the door together while the room watched in stunned silence. Behind them, Cressida finally found her voice. You can't just leave. This is unacceptable. She insulted me in my own home. You need to... Rowan paused at the doorway. Didn't turn around. Just said, very quietly, I need to do nothing, but if you ever speak to her like that again, you'll learn exactly why they call me the Wolf. Then they were out of the dining room, through the entrance hall, down the stairs to where the carriage waited. Elin's legs were trembling. Her breath came in short, sharp gasps. Get in, Rowan said. She did. He followed, closing the door behind them. The carriage lurched into motion. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The only sound was wheels on gravel and Elin's pulse hammering in her ears. Finally, Rowan said, That was unbelievably stupid. I know. You just made an enemy of one of the most powerful women in Greymont. I know. She'll come after you now, with everything she has. She won't stop until she's destroyed you. I know. Rowan leaned back against the seat, studying her in the dim light. Why did you do it? Because she thought I'd break. Because she assumed I'd apologize and scrape and prove her right about everything she already believed. Because I'm tired of making myself smaller so other people feel bigger. Elin met his eyes. And because you told me to stand my ground. I didn't tell you to declare war. Didn't you? Something passed between them, understanding maybe, or recognition. Two people who'd spent their lives being underestimated in different ways, finding unexpected common ground. What happens now? Elin asked. Now Cressida will retaliate. She'll dig into your background, your family, your finances. She'll find every weakness and exploit it. She'll turn society against you, make you unemployable, ruin your mother's business by association. That's comforting. It's not meant to be comforting, it's meant to be realistic. So I'm finished. Not necessarily. Elin waited. You have two options, Rowan continued. Disappear. Leave Greymont. Start over somewhere Cressida's influence doesn't reach. Or stay. Let me teach you how this world actually works. Learn to fight back properly. Survive. Why would you help me? I just embarrassed you in front of everyone you know. You didn't embarrass me. You challenged Cressida using the same weapons she was using against you. Social positioning, public perception, controlled honesty. He tilted his head. It was crude, unrefined, but effective. With training, you could be dangerous. Dangerous how? The kind of dangerous that makes people think twice before attacking. The kind that turns survival into strategy. Elin looked out the window. They were passing back through Greymont's streets, heading toward her neighborhood. Her real life. The one she'd tried to escape for one evening. And what do you get out of this? She asked. Entertainment, revenge against Cressida, proof that this system isn't as rigid as everyone pretends. He paused. And maybe someone who doesn't lie to me about what they want. What do you think I want? Power. Not the kind you're born with. The kind you take. He wasn't wrong. The carriage stopped in front of her building. Rowan opened the door, stepping out first before offering his hand. Elin took it, letting him help her down. The street was quiet, dark, a world away from the Vale mansion. Think about it, Rowan said. If you decide to stay and fight, send word. If you decide to run, I'll understand. But decide quickly. Cressida moves fast. And if I stay, what does training look like? Brutal. Unforgiving. You'll learn how to read people, manipulate social situations, use information as currency. Everything the nobility does naturally, you'll have to study, and you'll make mistakes. Probably catastrophic ones. Sounds delightful. It's necessary. If you're going to survive in their world, you need to become fluent in their language. Right now, you're shouting in broken sentences, effective for shock value, useless for sustained engagement. Elin looked up at her building. At the window where lamplight glowed, meaning her mother was still awake, waiting. I need to think. Take tonight. Send your answer tomorrow. And what will you do in the meantime? Damage control. Making sure tonight's disaster doesn't destroy you before you have a chance to decide your own fate. He climbed back into the carriage, then paused. Elin, what you did tonight? Standing up to Cressida? Most people spend their entire lives avoiding that kind of confrontation. You walked straight into it. That's either courage or stupidity. Which do you think? For the first time, Rowan actually smiled. Small, brief, but real. I think I haven't decided yet. The carriage pulled away, leaving Elin standing alone on the street in a dress worth more than everything she owned. She touched the silk, feeling the weight of the evening settle around her like armor or chains. She wasn't sure which. Inside, her mother was waiting at the kitchen table. She took one look at Elin's face and said, What happened? I declared war on Lady Cressida Vale. Iris went pale. Please tell me you're joking. I wish I was. Elin, what did you do? So Elin told her. Everything. The dinner, the questions, Cressida's calculated cruelty, her own response, the words she couldn't take back. When she finished, Iris was quiet for a long time. Then she said, We'll have to leave Greymont. Pack tonight. Be gone by morning before she can... No. Elin, I'm not running. The certainty surprised her, but it was there, solid and immovable. I'm tired of running, of making myself smaller, of apologizing for existing in spaces other people decided I don't belong in. And what's your plan? Fight a woman with unlimited resources and social power? Learn how. Duke Hale offered to teach me. Iris stood abruptly, pacing. And what does he want in return? I don't know. Entertainment, maybe, or just someone who won't lie to him. Men like that always want something. Maybe, but right now he's the only option I have besides disappearing. Her mother stopped pacing, looking at Elin with an expression that was equal parts fear and something else. Pride, maybe, or recognition. You look like your father right now, Iris said quietly. Same stubborn set to your jaw. Same refusal to back down even when you should. Elin had never known her father. He'd died when she was 2, leaving Iris alone with a business and a child and debts that had taken years to pay off. Is that a compliment? It's an observation. He was brave too, and it got him killed. Iris crossed her arms. But he was also right about some things, about not letting fear make all your decisions, about fighting for something, even when the odds are impossible. So you think I should stay? I think you've already decided. I'm just trying to accept it. Elin hugged her mother, quick and fierce. I'll be careful. No, you won't, but maybe that's the point. That night, Elin lay in bed, still wearing the midnight dress because taking it off felt like admitting defeat. She stared at the ceiling and thought about wrong doors and right choices and the difference between courage and stupidity. Tomorrow, she'd send word to Rowan. She'd accept his offer. She'd learned to fight in a war she'd started without understanding the rules. But tonight, she let herself feel it, the terror and the exhilaration and the strange, reckless hope that maybe, just maybe, she could become someone who didn't just survive but actually won. Outside her window, Graymont slept, unaware that a seamstress's daughter had just decided to burn down everything safe and familiar. The dress shimmered in the darkness like a promise, or a threat. Elin woke to pounding on the door at dawn. Not polite knocking, the kind of pounding that meant trouble had arrived early and wasn't planning to leave quietly. Her mother got there first, still in her nightgown, her face tight with the expression she wore when creditors came calling. Elin scrambled out of bed, the midnight dress pooling around her ankles as she stumbled into the kitchen. Thomas stood in the doorway, pale and shaking, her 14-year-old brother, who should have been at his apprenticeship at the printing house 3 blocks away. They fired me, he said. Mr. Garrett said we're not the kind of family he wants associated with his business anymore. Said people are talking about Elin, about scandal. He can't afford to keep me. Iris's face went from worried to cold fury. When? Just now. He pulled me aside first thing and told me not to come back. Thomas looked at Elin, confusion and hurt warring in his expression. What did you do? Before Elin could answer, another knock came, this one softer but somehow more ominous. A messenger in simple clothes handed Iris an envelope, then disappeared down the street like he didn't want to be seen. Iris tore it open, read. Her hands started to shake. What is it? Elin asked. Letter from Mrs. Ashford. She's canceling all pending orders, effective immediately. No explanation, just... Her mother's voice cracked. Just that she'll be seeking services elsewhere. The room went very quiet. Thomas broke the silence. I don't understand. What's happening? Elin felt the walls closing in. This was Cressida, moving fast, just like Rowan had warned, cutting off income, destroying reputation, making an example. I need to go out, Elin said. Where, sus? Iris demanded. To fix this. You can't fix this. You started a war with someone who owns half the city. She's going to destroy us, Elin, systematically, until there's nothing left. Then I need to learn how to fight back. Now. She changed quickly, back into her regular clothes, the practical dress that marked her as what she really was. The midnight silk went back in its box, beautiful and useless. Then she grabbed paper and wrote a single line. I'm staying. When do we start? She sent it via the cheapest messenger service, paying with coins she couldn't afford to spare. Then she waited. The response came within an hour. Same heavy paper, same efficient handwriting. My estate. Noon. Don't be late. Rowan's estate sat on the northern edge of Graymont, surrounded by walls that looked more functional than decorative. No excessive gardens, no columns, just stone and iron and the kind of architecture that prioritized defense over beauty. A guard led her through the gate without comment, like he'd been expecting her. The main house was smaller than she'd anticipated. 2 stories, practical windows, minimal ornamentation. It looked like a place where someone actually lived rather than performed. Rowan met her at the door. He was dressed simply, dark shirt, no jacket, hair slightly disheveled like he'd been working. For a moment, he looked almost human. You got hit this morning, he said. Not a question. My brother lost his job. My mother lost her biggest client. I assume there's more coming. There is. By tonight, most of your mother's remaining clients will cancel. By tomorrow, landlords will start receiving anonymous complaints about disturbances at your address. By next week, you'll struggle to buy bread because shopkeepers won't want the association. Elin's stomach twisted. How do you know? Because it's what I do. Cressida's following the standard playbook. Isolate, impoverish, force surrender, or departure. Can we stop it? No. But we can make her work harder than she expected, and we can build you defenses she won't anticipate. He stepped aside. Come in. The interior was sparse but comfortable. Books everywhere. Maps on the walls. Furniture that looked used rather than decorative. It felt lived in. Real. Rowan led her to a study lined with more books and a large desk covered in papers. He gestured to a chair. She sat. First lesson, he said, remaining standing. Information is currency. The more you have, the more power you wield. Cressida's attacking you based on assumptions. She thinks you're poor, powerless, and alone. We're going to make her question all three. How? I am poor and powerless. You're resourceful and you have me. That's not nothing. He pulled a folder from his desk. I had my people gather information on Cressida's current vulnerabilities. 3 areas where she's exposed. We're going to exploit all of them. He spread papers across the desk. Financial records, letters, documents Elin couldn't begin to understand the legality of obtaining. First, her brother, Lord Marcus Vale. Gambling debts. Substantial ones. She's been covering them quietly to avoid scandal. If that information becomes public, it damages her reputation as the paragon of aristocratic virtue. And we're going to tell people? We're going to make sure the right people know, people who'll use it, people she's crossed before. Rowan tapped another document. Second, the Vale estate. She's been embezzling from the family accounts. Not much, just enough to maintain her lifestyle while her brother bleeds them dry. The estate manager knows. He's been documenting it. For insurance, I assume. How did you get this? I bought his loyalty yesterday while you were deciding whether to run or fight. Rowan's expression remained neutral. Third, Lord Ashford's cousin, the one she's sleeping with. He's about to become engaged to someone else. A marriage alliance Cressida knows nothing about. When it's announced, her leverage disappears, and her humiliation becomes public. Elin stared at the papers, This wasn't fighting. This was demolition. You're going to destroy her. I'm going to create options. Whether we use them depends on how aggressive she gets. He gathered the documents. But you need to understand something. This world runs on leverage and information. Cressida has both. To survive, you need to acquire them too, which means learning to see what people hide, understanding what they fear, using it when necessary. That sounds like manipulation. It is manipulation. The only difference between manipulation and persuasion is whether people realize you're doing it. He met her eyes. Are you uncomfortable with that? Elin thought about her brother's face, her mother's shaking hands, the casual cruelty of people who'd never worried about rent. No. Good. Then let's begin. The next 3 hours were brutal. Rowan taught her how to read social hierarchies like maps, who had real power versus who performed it, how to identify alliances by watching who spoke to whom at gatherings, how to leverage one person's ambition against another's insecurity. He made her practice reading him, identifying what he was feeling based on micro-expressions, body language, tone. She was terrible at it. Again, he said, after she'd misread his frustration as indifference for the 4th time. This is impossible. You barely show anything. Exactly. Which is why you need to learn to see the barely. Most people telegraph everything. I don't. If you can read me, you can read anyone. By the time they finished, Elin's head ached. She felt like she'd been studying a foreign language at speed while someone held a knife to her throat. Tomorrow, Rowan said. Same time. We'll work on conversation strategy. How to control dialogue without appearing to. How to make people reveal information they intended to keep private. Tomorrow I need to help my mother. We have to figure out how to survive losing her income. Your mother's income is gone regardless. You can't sew your way out of this. The only solution is forward, through, not around. His voice softened, barely, but enough to notice. I'll have funds transferred to your household account, enough to cover basic expenses for the next 3 months. Consider it an investment in your education. I can't accept that. You can and you will. Pride is expensive. You can't afford it right now. Elin wanted to argue, but he was right. Pride wouldn't feed Thomas or pay rent. 3 months, she said, then I find another way. Agreed. A knock interrupted them. A servant entered looking apologetic. Sir, Lady Sutherland is here. She says it's urgent. Maggie swept in before Rowan could respond, still wearing riding clothes and looking windblown. Elin, thank goodness! I've been looking everywhere for you. How did you know I was here? Where else would you be? After last night's spectacular disaster, I figured Rowan would either be training you or hiding the body. Since you're vertical and conscious, I'm assuming training. She turned to Rowan. You need to hear this. Cressida's planning something for the Hastings ball tomorrow night. What kind of something? Rowan asked. Public humiliation. She's been spreading rumors that Elin bought her way into society using, let's call it personal services. And tomorrow night, she's planning to have Lord Pemberton confront her directly, in front of everyone. Force her to either defend herself, which will make her look defensive, or stay silent, which will make her look guilty. Elin felt cold. Why are you telling me this? Because I hate bullies, and because watching you take Cressida down a peg was the most entertaining thing I've seen in years. Maggie grinned. Also, I'm bored. My life is excruciatingly dull. You're interesting. I'm investing in future entertainment. Your honesty is refreshing, Rowan said dryly. I know. It's my best quality. Maggie turned back to Elin. So, are you going to the ball? I wasn't planning to. Which is exactly what Cressida expects. She thinks you'll hide. Don't. Show up. Prepared. Make her work for it. She has a point, Rowan said. Running now confirms everything Cressida is saying about you. Appearing confirms you're not afraid. Either way is a statement. Choose which statement you want to make. Elin looked between them. And if I go, what's the plan? We don't give Pemberton the confrontation he's expecting, Rowan said. We flip the script. Turn his attack into an opportunity. How? By being better informed than he is. By knowing things about him he doesn't want public. By making him realize that attacking you will cost him more than it benefits Cressida. Maggie clapped her hands. Oh, this is going to be fun. I'll help. I know everyone's secrets. Literally everyone's. It's my hobby. That's disturbing, Elin said. That's survival. Welcome to the aristocracy. They spent the next hour strategizing. Maggie provided information with the casual ease of someone discussing weather. Who was sleeping with whom? Who had debts? Who was desperate for advancement? Who hated Cressida but feared her too much to act? Lord Pemberton, it turned out, was having an affair with his wife's sister, a scandal that would destroy him socially and financially if it became public. He was working with Cressida because she'd promised to keep the information quiet in exchange for his help attacking Elin. So we threaten him, Elin said. Tell him we know. Force him to back off. Too direct, Rowan said. Threats create enemies. We want to make him our ally, or at least neutralize him without creating lasting hostility. How? By giving him an escape route. We let him know we're aware of his situation. We offer to keep it quiet, but only if he refuses to participate in Cressida's plan. We frame it as mutual benefit, not coercion. That's still coercion. It's coercion with courtesy. There's a difference. By the time Maggie left, promising to spread counter-rumors and gather more intelligence, the sun was setting. Elin realized she'd been at Rowan's estate for nearly 8 hours. Her mother would be frantic. I need to go home, she said. Rowan nodded. I'll have a carriage take you. I can walk. You could, but it's getting dark and Cressida's people might be watching. Better not to give them opportunities. He was right. She hated that he was right. The carriage arrived. Elin stood, gathering her things. At the door she paused. Why are you doing this? She asked. Really, it can't just be entertainment. Rowan was quiet for a moment. Then he said, When I was younger, I made the mistake of doing what was expected. Following rules. Maintaining appearances. Protecting reputation. It cost me everything that mattered. I won't make that mistake again. And I won't watch someone else get destroyed by a system that rewards cruelty and punishes honesty. It was the most personal thing he'd said to her. Elin wanted to ask what he'd lost, but his expression had gone distant, closed. "Thank you," she said instead. "Don't thank me yet. Tomorrow might go very badly. But it might not." Optimism. Interesting. He almost smiled. "Go home. Rest. Tomorrow we fight." The next evening, Elin stood in front of the mirror wearing another dress that didn't belong to her. This one was deep burgundy with subtle beading, elegant but not ostentatious, armor disguised as fashion. Maggie had sent it with a note. Look powerful, feel powerful, be powerful, or at least fake it convincingly. Iris helped with her hair, pinning it up with more care than usual. "You don't have to do this." "Yes, I do." "You could still leave. We could all leave. Start over somewhere else." Running won't stop Cressida. She'd just see it as confirmation, proof that we don't belong, that we never did. Elin met her mother's eyes in the mirror. "I'm tired of other people deciding what I'm worth." "Your father used to say that." Iris's hands trembled slightly, right before he picked a fight with someone who had him killed for the audacity. "You never told me how he died." "Because it was stupid. Brave, but stupid. He challenged a merchant who was cheating workers, thought justice mattered more than survival, and maybe it did, but justice didn't keep food on the table after he was gone." Elin turned to face her mother directly. "Do you regret that he fought?" Iris was quiet for a long time. Then, "I regret that he lost. But no, I don't regret that he tried." The Hastings ball was smaller than the Vale dinner, but no less dangerous. Fewer guests meant everyone would notice everything. Fewer places to hide meant every interaction mattered. Rowan met her at the entrance, dressed in formal black that made him look like violence wrapped in civility. His eyes scanned her quickly. Assessment, not appreciation. "Ready?" "No." "Good. Confidence is overrated. Awareness is better." They entered together. The room went quiet in that way Elin was starting to recognize. The pause before people decided whether to attack or ignore. Maggie appeared instantly, hooking her arm through Elin's. "You look fierce. I approve. Now smile like you're not terrified and follow my lead." She steered them toward a group near the windows. Minor nobility, mostly. People who followed power rather than wielded it. Maggie made introductions with bright efficiency, making it clear through tone and positioning that Elin was under her protection. It worked. Mostly. People were polite, cautious, waiting to see which way the wind blew before committing to friendliness or hostility. Then Lord Pemberton entered. He saw Elin immediately. His face went through several expressions: recognition, calculation, something that looked like reluctance. He started toward them, moving with the determination of someone following orders they didn't particularly want to follow. "Here we go," Maggie murmured. Pemberton stopped in front of them, his smile not reaching his eyes. "Miss Varell, how unexpected to see you here." "Lord Pemberton." Elin kept her voice neutral. "I was just discussing your unique position with some colleagues. There seems to be considerable curiosity about your background, your qualifications for moving in these circles." The insult was barely veiled. Several nearby conversations quieted. People were listening. This was it. The moment Cressida had orchestrated, the public humiliation designed to force Elin into either submission or self-destruction. Elin felt Rowan's presence beside her, solid and waiting. Maggie's hand squeezed her arm once. Support or warning, she wasn't sure. "Stand your ground. And my qualifications," Elin said clearly, "are the same as anyone's. I was invited. I accepted. If that troubles you, perhaps your issue is with the invitation system rather than with me. The invitation came from Duke Hale, whose judgment in companions has become questionable." A direct attack on Rowan now. Pemberton was escalating, probably beyond what Cressida had instructed. Fear made people reckless. "Careful, Pemberton." Rowan's voice was soft, deadly. "You're walking a narrow line." "I'm simply expressing concern shared by many. This girl appears from nowhere, attaches herself to you, and suddenly expects acceptance. It raises questions." "What kind of questions?" Elin asked, keeping her tone conversational. Curious rather than defensive. Pemberton hesitated, thrown by her lack of reaction. Questions about motivations, methods, the nature of your relationship with the Duke. There it was, the accusation wrapped in implication. The room held its breath. Elin smiled. Not warm, not friendly, just enough to show teeth. How interesting that you're so concerned with my relationship with Duke Hale. Almost as interesting as your relationship with your wife's sister. What was her name again? Catherine? No, Caroline. I always get them confused. Pemberton went white. Several people gasped. Maggie made a sound that might have been a laugh disguised as a cough. I don't know what you're... Of course you don't. Just like I don't know what you're implying about me. Elin's voice stayed light, pleasant, lethal. We're both making observations about relationships that might raise questions if examined too closely. The difference is I'm comfortable with scrutiny. Are you? Pemberton looked like he'd swallowed glass. Behind him, Elin could see Cressida watching from across the room, her expression frozen between shock and fury. This is inappropriate, Pemberton said weakly. Is it? You started this conversation. I'm simply participating. Elin tilted her head. But if you'd prefer to drop the subject entirely, I'm amenable. Sometimes discretion benefits everyone involved. Don't you agree? The threat and the escape route, delivered in the same breath. Pemberton grabbed it like a drowning man reaching for a rope. Perhaps I was hasty in my observations. Perhaps you were. Fortunately, mistakes can be corrected. Rumors can be redirected. If people choose to be helpful rather than destructive. Understanding flickered in his eyes. He nodded once, sharp and humiliated, then retreated without another word. The room erupted in whispers. Maggie leaned in close. That was beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Cressida looks like she wants to murder someone. Probably me, Elin said, her hands shaking now that the adrenaline was fading. Definitely you. But she can't touch you now. You just proved you can defend yourself, that you have information, that attacking you has consequences. Maggie grinned. You just became dangerous. Rowan appeared at Elin's elbow. We should leave. You made your point. Staying longer gives Cressida time to regroup. They made their exit, not rushed but deliberate. Elin kept her head high, her expression calm. Inside, she was screaming. Outside, in the cold air, she finally let herself breathe. How did you know about Pemberton's affair? Rowan asked. You told me yesterday, when we were reviewing Maggie's information. I gave you dozens of pieces of information. You remembered that one specifically? I remember all of them. That's what you taught me. Information is currency. I'm learning to spend it. Rowan studied her for a long moment. You're learning faster than I expected. Is that a compliment? It's an observation, but yes. The carriage arrived. Elin climbed in, exhaustion hitting her like a physical weight. Rowan sat across from her. What happens now? She asked. Now Cressida escalates. Tonight you embarrassed her publicly, twice. First at her dinner, now at the ball. She won't let that stand. How much worse can it get? Rowan's expression darkened. Much worse. She's been playing with you, testing limits. Now she'll stop playing. She'll come after your family directly. Your mother's business. Your brother's future. Your reputation in ways that can't be defended with clever words. Fear twisted in Elin's chest. So what do? We hit her first. Hard enough that she has to spend resources defending herself instead of attacking you. We use everything we have, the information on her brother, the embezzlement, the affair. We don't threaten. We execute. That will destroy her. It will damage her. There's a difference. But yes, it will hurt, and it will make her an enemy for life. As opposed to now, when she's what? A casual opponent? Now she sees you as an annoyance. After this, she'll see you as a threat. Those are very different positions. Elin looked out the window at Greymont passing by. Her city, her home, a place that suddenly felt like a battlefield. Do it, she said. You're sure? She started this. She came after my family, my mother, my brother. She doesn't get to do that and walk away clean. Elin met Rowan's eyes. Do it. He nodded. Tomorrow morning. I'll release the information through channels Cressida can't trace directly to us. By noon, her world will be on fire. She'll be too busy containing damage to focus on you. And then? Then you learn to live with the consequences of becoming someone people fear. The carriage stopped outside her building. Elin stepped out, then paused. Rowan, what you lost. When you did what was expected. Was it worth it? Following the rules? His face went carefully blank. No. Would you do it differently now? Every day? Every single day. He signaled the driver and the carriage pulled away, leaving Elin alone in the dark. Inside, her mother and Thomas were asleep. The house was quiet, normal, like tomorrow wouldn't change everything. Elin sat at the kitchen table and thought about her father, about fighting for something even when the odds were impossible, about the difference between surviving and living. Then she pulled out paper and wrote out everything she could remember from the past 2 days. Every piece of information Rowan had shared, every technique Maggie had mentioned, every observation she'd made. She was building an arsenal, one fact, one connection, one piece of leverage at a time, because Cressida wasn't going to stop, and neither was she. The next morning, Greymont woke to scandal. Lord Marcus Vale's gambling debts, detailed, documented, devastating. Cressida's embezzlement, not enough to be criminal, but enough to humiliate. Lord Ashford's cousin's engagement to a respectable merchant's daughter, announced publicly, ending his affair with Cressida in the most public way possible. By mid-morning, the Vale household was in chaos. By afternoon, Cressida had withdrawn from 3 social engagements and canceled a charity event she'd been organizing. Elin heard about it from Maggie, who arrived unannounced with news and pastries. "It's glorious chaos," Maggie said, spreading butter with excessive enthusiasm. Cressida is trapped in her own house dealing with her brother's creditors and trying to explain the financial discrepancies to her estate manager. She looks like she's aged 10 years overnight. "Good," Elin said, feeling a fierce satisfaction that should probably worry her but didn't. "Although," Maggie's expression turned serious. "She knows it was you. Well, you and Rowan. She can't prove it, but she knows. And when she recovers from this, and she will recover, she's going to come after you with everything she has. Let her." "Elin, I'm serious. Cressida in survival mode is dangerous. She'll do things she wouldn't normally risk. Spread lies that can't be disproven. Create situations that force you into impossible positions. She'll make this personal in ways that go beyond social warfare." Before Elin could respond, Thomas burst through the door, his face pale and terrified. "Elin, there are men here. They say we owe money, a lot of money. They have papers showing loans we never took out. They're threatening to take the house." Elin's blood went cold. "What men?" "Debt collectors. They're outside. They say if we don't pay by tonight, they'll seize our property." Maggie stood immediately. "Cressida. She's fabricated debt. It's a classic move. Create false documentation, send enforcers, force you into a crisis you can't solve legally because the process takes too long." Elin ran outside. 2 large men stood on the street, flanked by a thin man in clerk's clothing holding official-looking papers. "Miss Varell?" the thin man said. "I represent Greymont Collections. You have outstanding debt in the amount of 5,000 crowns. Payment is due immediately, or we begin seizure proceedings." "We don't owe any money." "The documents say otherwise. Loans taken out 3 months ago, signed by Iris Varell." He held up papers covered in signatures and seals. Forged. Obviously forged. But proving that would take time they didn't have. "This is fraud," Elin said. "Then you can contest it through proper legal channels. Until then, our claim stands." The thin man smiled without warmth. "You have until sunset. 5,000 crowns, or we take possession of the property." 5,000 crowns. More money than her family would make in 3 years. Impossible. The men left, their threat hanging in the air like smoke. Elin's mind raced. This was Cressida's countermove. If the information attack didn't destroy Elin first, make her homeless, desperate, force her to disappear or beg for mercy. "We need Rowan," Maggie said. "He can—" "No." Elin's voice was sharp. "I'm not running to him every time Cressida strikes. I need to handle this." How? You don't have 5,000 crowns. None of us do. Elin looked at her house, at Thomas standing in the doorway, frightened and confused, at everything her mother had built being threatened by someone who saw them as pawns in a larger game. Then she remembered something Rowan had said. Information is currency. She had information about Pemberton, about others, things Maggie had shared, things she'd observed, pieces of leverage scattered across Greymont's elite. What if she used them, not for defense, for trade? I need to make some visits, Elin said. Visits to who? Everyone who owes Cressida. Everyone who hates her but can't act against her. Everyone who might benefit from her being weakened right now. Elin turned to Maggie. You said you know everyone's secrets. I need a list. People who would pay for information or favors. People who need leverage. Understanding dawned in Maggie's eyes. You're going to sell information. I'm going to trade it for money, for favors, for whatever it takes to make 5,000 crowns appear by sunset. That's insane. You have hours, not days. Then we'd better move fast. They split up. Maggie went to 3 merchant families who'd been trying to break into noble circles, offering information on social connections in exchange for immediate payment. Elin went to Lord Pemberton first. He answered the door himself, looking haggard. You. We need to talk, Elin said. Privately. They ended up in his study. Elin didn't waste time. I need 2,000 crowns today, by sunset. Are you insane? I have information you want, about who else knows about you and Caroline, about when they're planning to use it, about how to stop them. She leaned forward. I also have information about Cressida's current vulnerabilities, things you could use to break free from her entirely, information worth far more than 2,000 crowns. And if I refuse, then Caroline's husband finds out, tonight, through anonymous correspondence containing dates, locations, and specific details impossible to deny. Pemberton's face went through several expressions before settling on defeated rage. You're learning too well. I had good teachers. Do we have a deal? He wrote the bank draft with shaking hands. 2,000 crowns. Elin folded it carefully and left without another word. Next, Lady Ashford, who'd cancelled her mother's orders but who also had a daughter trying to secure a marriage proposal from a young lord who'd shown no interest. I can make him interested, Elin said. I can provide information about his family's preferences, his mother's concerns, exactly what your daughter needs to say and do. Guaranteed engagement within 2 months. How? I have sources, resources. I'm learning to use them. 1,000 crowns for the information package. Take it or leave it. Lady Ashford took it. By mid-afternoon, Elin had collected 4,000 crowns through a combination of information sales, called in favors, and one outright bribe to keep quiet about a minor lord's illegal business dealings. She still needed 1,000 more, and time was running out. That's when she went to Rowan. He was in his study, reviewing documents. He looked up when she entered, taking in her expression. What happened? She told him. Everything. The fake debt, her desperate scramble to gather money, the deals she'd made in the past 6 hours. When she finished, Rowan was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, How much do you still need? 1,000. But I'm not asking you to give it to me. I'm asking for a loan, to be repaid with interest once I figure out how. You've been operating for 6 hours, and you've generated 4,000 crowns through pure leverage and information trading. Something that might have been respect flickered in his expression. Most people can't do that in 6 years. Most people aren't desperate enough. I need the money, Rowan. Please. He pulled out a bank draft, wrote, handed it over. 1,000 crowns. Consider it an investment, he said, in someone who's proving she can survive in this world. No interest, no repayment schedule. But you owe me one favor, to be determined later. That's a terrible deal for me. Yes, but it's the only one you're getting. Do you accept? Elin took the draft. Yes. Good. Now go pay your fabricated debt and enjoy watching Cressida realize she underestimated you. Elin made it to the collection office with an hour to spare. The thin man looked genuinely surprised when she presented 5,000 crowns in bank drafts. I believe this settles our business, she said calmly. He verified the drafts. stamped documents, looked vaguely disappointed that his intimidation tactics had failed. "Debt cleared. You'll receive formal confirmation within 3 days." Elin walked out into the fading sunlight feeling exhausted and electric. She'd won, this round at least. But as she walked home, she realized something had shifted inside her. She'd sold information, leveraged fear, played the same games that had been used against her. She'd become exactly what this world demanded, someone willing to fight dirty to survive. The question was, at what cost? That night, a letter arrived. No seal, no signature, just 3 words in elegant handwriting. "Well played, girl." Elin stared at it, her hands shaking, because she recognized the handwriting from Cressida's dinner invitation. This wasn't over. This had just begun. This had just begun. Elin stared at the 3 words until her vision blurred. The paper trembled in her hands, not from fear this time, but from something sharper. Anger mixed with recognition. Cressida wasn't backing down. She was acknowledging the game had changed players. "What is it?" Iris asked from the doorway. Elin folded the letter carefully, creasing it with precision. "Confirmation." "Of what?" "That I'm not running anymore." The next morning, Rowan's estate felt different. Or maybe Elin felt different walking into it. She'd been summoned, another terse note delivered at dawn, but this time she didn't feel like someone scrambling to keep up. She felt like someone who'd earned her place at the table. Rowan was waiting in his study with Maggie, who looked far too cheerful for the early hour. "You survived," Maggie said brightly, "and apparently thrived. 4,000 crowns in 6 hours. I'm genuinely impressed. Also slightly terrified of you now." "Good," Elin said, sitting without being invited. "What's the situation?" Rowan raised an eyebrow at her directness but didn't comment. "Cressida's regrouping. My sources say she's been in meetings with her remaining allies, planning something bigger than debt collection or social embarrassment." "How much bigger?" "The kind that involves your mother's business license being revoked, your brother being accused of theft from his former employer, you being formally investigated for fraud related to the information you sold yesterday." Elin's stomach dropped. Can she prove fraud? She doesn't need to prove it. She just needs to create enough smoke that people assume fire. An official investigation, even one that goes nowhere, destroys credibility. No one will deal with you if they think you're under scrutiny. So what do? We stop playing defense. Rowan spread a map of Greymont across his desk, marked with locations and names. Cressida's power comes from 3 sources: her social connections, her family's wealth, and people's fear of crossing her. We've damaged the first 2. Time to eliminate the 3rd. By doing what? By making you indispensable. If enough people need you, genuinely need what you can provide, Cressida can't touch you without harming her own interests. Maggie leaned forward. He's right. You proved yesterday you can gather and leverage information better than most people who've been doing it for years. That's valuable. We just need to make it official. Official how? By creating a business, Rowan said. Consulting, information brokerage, social strategy, whatever you want to call it. You become the person people come to when they need to navigate elite society, when they need leverage, when they need problems solved quietly. Elin stared at him. You want me to become what Cressida is, a power broker. I want you to become what Cressida pretends to be. The difference is you'll be honest about the transactional nature of it, no false friendships, no manipulation disguised as charity, just clear exchanges, information for payment, strategy for loyalty. That's insane. It's necessary. You can't survive in this world by being liked, Elin. You survive by being needed. Maggie pulled out a list. I've already started compiling potential clients, minor nobility trying to advance, merchants wanting social connections, second sons looking for advantageous marriages, people who need what you can provide but can't access it through traditional channels. And they'll trust me? A seamstress's daughter with no credentials? They'll trust results. You generated 4,000 crowns in 6 hours using nothing but information and nerve. That's a better credential than any family name. Maggie's expression turned serious. But you need to move fast. Once Cressida figures out what you're building, she'll try to destroy it before it solidifies. Then we move now. Elin felt something settle in her chest. Certainty or recklessness, she wasn't sure. What's first? Rowan pointed to a name on his map. Lord Edmund Carr, second son, no inheritance, desperate for a position in the Duke of Ashmont's household. He's been trying for months, getting nowhere. And I can help him how? The Duke's wife has a sister, unmarried, 28. Family's getting desperate to see her settled. Lord Carr is exactly the kind of respectable but not threatening match they'd accept. You broker the introduction, provide strategy, get him the position through the marriage alliance. What does he pay? 500 crowns plus loyalty. He becomes someone who owes you, someone who'll vouch for your legitimacy when others question it. Elin looked at the map, at the network of names and connections Rowan had marked, a whole invisible infrastructure of need and ambition and desperation. Set the meeting, she said. Lord Edmund Carr was exactly as desperate as advertised. He met Elin in a small tea room on neutral ground, looking like a man trying not to drown in genteel poverty. Mid-30s, worn clothes that were expensive once, the kind of careful grooming that spoke of limited resources stretched thin. Miss Varell. He sat across from her, glancing around nervously. I appreciate you taking the time, though I confess I'm not entirely sure what you're offering. Solutions, Elin said simply. You want a position in the Ashmont household. I can provide a path to that position, in exchange for payment and future considerations. Future considerations? Your public support when I need it, your testimony to my legitimacy, your willingness to recommend my services to others who might benefit. Carr studied her with new interest. You're building a network. I'm building a business. There's a difference. Not much of one in this world. He leaned back. What's your plan for Ashmont? Elin laid it out. The unmarried sister, the family's desperation, the specific approach Carr should take, emphasizing stability over passion, financial prudence over romance, his willingness to be a supportive brother-in-law rather than a demanding husband. The Duke's wife values family above everything, Elin explained. You become the solution to her sister's problem. You become valuable to the household. The position follows naturally. And you know this how? I make it my business to know. Do we have an agreement? Carr hesitated. 500 crowns is significant. Less than you'd spend in 6 months of unsuccessful social maneuvering, and I guarantee results within 8 weeks. If you don't have the position by then, you pay nothing. That's a strong guarantee. I don't make promises I can't keep. Yes or no, Lord Carr? I have other appointments. Oh, she didn't, but he didn't need to know that. Yes, he said. We have an agreement. The second client came through Maggie, a merchant's daughter trying to marry into minor nobility. The third came through Lord Carr's referral before he'd even secured his own position. Word spread faster than Elin expected. Within 2 weeks, she had 7 clients. Within a month, 15. Each one a small victory. Each one building the foundation of something that looked increasingly like power. She worked from a small office Rowan helped her secure, nothing fancy but respectable. A place where people could meet her without feeling they were slumming. She hired a clerk to manage appointments. She developed a system for tracking information, connections, leverage. Her mother watched the transformation with something between pride and fear. You're becoming one of them, Iris said one evening, watching Elin review client files. I'm becoming something they need. There's a difference. Is there? You're trading in secrets and manipulation just like they do. Yes, but I'm honest about it. No one comes to me expecting friendship or charity. They come expecting results, and I deliver. Your father would have hated this. Elin looked up sharply. Father fought a system that killed him. I'm learning to survive it. Those aren't the same thing. Aren't they? The question hung between them unanswered. 6 weeks after opening her consulting business, Elin received an invitation that changed everything. The Winter Gala, the most prestigious social event of the season, hosted by the Duke and Duchess of Ashmont themselves, the kind of event that defined social hierarchies for the coming year. She'd been invited, not as Rowan's guest, not as someone's charity case, as Miss Elin Varell, consultant in her own right. This is Cressida, Maggie said when Elin showed her the invitation. It has to be. She's setting something up. Probably, but refusing looks weak, like I'm afraid. You should be afraid. This is her territory, her people. If she's planning something public, then I'll deal with it publicly. Elin set the invitation aside. I'm not hiding anymore. Rowan was less optimistic. You're walking into a trap. I'm walking into an opportunity. There's a difference. There really isn't, not in this case. He paced his study, more agitated than she'd ever seen him. You've built something impressive in 6 weeks. Don't destroy it by overreaching. I'm not overreaching. I'm claiming space that should have been mine all along. Should have been? Elin, you're a seamstress's daughter running a consulting business based on leveraged information and social strategy. You've done brilliantly, but this, he gestured at the invitation, this is different. This is the inner circle. The people who actually rule this city. One mistake there doesn't just hurt your business, it ends it. Then I won't make a mistake. You can't guarantee that. Neither can you, but you took risks anyway. Why can't I? The question stopped him. His expression shifted, something old and painful crossing his face. Because I know what it costs, he said quietly. What you lose when you gamble everything on principle, and the world doesn't care about your principles. Elin moved closer. What did you lose, Rowan? You've never told me. It doesn't matter. It does to me. He was quiet for a long moment. Then, someone I loved. Someone I should have chosen, but didn't because I was too busy doing what was expected, following rules, protecting reputation. By the time I realized what mattered, it was too late. She was gone. The pain in his voice was raw enough that Elin felt it physically. I'm sorry, she said. Don't be. Be smart. Don't make the same mistake I did. Don't sacrifice what matters for what looks right. I'm not sacrificing anything. I'm fighting for it. And what if you lose? Then at least I fought. The winter gala took place in the Ashmont Estate's grand ballroom, a space designed to make people feel simultaneously important and insignificant. Crystal chandeliers the size of carriages, marble floors that reflected light like ice. More wealth on display than Elin had seen in her entire life concentrated in one place. She wore midnight blue again, the dress Rowan had first sent her, altered slightly by her mother to fit perfectly. Armor disguised as elegance. Rowan escorted her, though he'd made clear this was a terrible idea. Maggie arrived separately, playing her role as friendly observer. Between them, Elin had as much protection as possible. It wasn't enough. She knew it wasn't enough. But she walked in anyway. The room went quiet when she entered, not the hostile silence from before. Something different. Curiosity mixed with wariness. People had heard about her now. About her business. About the clients she'd helped and the results she'd delivered. She wasn't nobody anymore. She was someone. The question was what kind of someone? Cressida appeared within minutes, gliding across the floor in ice-white silk that made her look like winter personified. Miss Varell, how lovely to see you here. I hadn't realized consultants ranked invitations to events like this. The Duchess apparently disagrees with your assessment, Elin said calmly. But thank you for your concern about my qualifications. It's touching. Cressida's smile sharpened. Oh, I'm not concerned about your qualifications. I'm concerned about your stability. Building a business on leveraged information is such a precarious foundation. One wrong move and everything collapses. Is that a threat? It's an observation from someone who's been in this world longer than you've been alive. Cressida leaned closer, lowering her voice. You've done well for a beginner, but you're still playing in waters you don't understand, and eventually you'll drown. Maybe. Or maybe I'll learn to swim better than you ever did. We'll see. Cressida drifted away, leaving Elin with the certainty that something was coming. Soon. The first blow came during dinner. Elin was seated at a table with minor nobility, respectable placement for someone of her new status. Conversation flowed around her, carefully polite. Then Lord Pemberton stood to make a toast. To the Duke and Duchess, he began, raising his glass, for hosting this magnificent event, for bringing together the finest of Greymont society. Though I confess, the guest list this year has been surprisingly diverse. Eyes turned toward Elin. We have merchants at our tables, consultants. He said the word like it tasted bad. People who've built positions through information trading rather than inheritance or merit. It makes one wonder about the nature of society, whether we're maintaining standards or abandoning them. The room had gone silent. This was it. The public challenge. The moment Cressida had orchestrated. Elin stood. Lord Pemberton raises an interesting point, she said, her voice carrying clearly, about merit versus inheritance, about what we value in our society. So let me pose a question. What is merit? Is it being born to the right family, or is it the ability to provide value regardless of origin? Pemberton's face darkened. Value? What value does information trading provide beyond gossip and manipulation? The same value any business provides, solutions to problems. Your daughter needed a marriage match. I provided strategy that secured her engagement to Lord Hertford's son. Lord Carr needed a position. I facilitated his placement in this very household. Lady Morrison needed social connections her family name couldn't provide. I built them for her. Elin looked around the room. Half the people in this room have benefited directly or indirectly from services I've provided. If that's not value, I don't know what is. It's exploitation, Pemberton shot back. You leverage people's desperation. I leverage their needs. The same way merchants leverage hunger by selling food. The same way landlords leverage housing needs by renting property. The only difference is I'm honest about the transaction. No one who works with me has illusions about what we're exchanging. Can you say the same about your business dealings, Lord Pemberton? His face went red. Several people at nearby tables shifted uncomfortably. This is outrageous, someone muttered. This is honesty, Elin said, which apparently qualifies as outrageous in this room. I'm not here pretending to be something I'm not. I'm a seamstress's daughter who learned to read social patterns the same way I learned to read fabric. I built a business providing services people need. If that makes me unsuitable for this gathering, then perhaps the criteria for suitability need examination. The Duchess of Ashmont stood. The room held its breath. Miss Varell makes a compelling point, she said quietly. Value comes in many forms. My husband and I invited her because she helped place Lord Carr in our household. His work has been exemplary. His marriage to my sister has brought our family considerable joy. That is merit, regardless of who facilitated it. She raised her glass. To solutions, and to those clever enough to provide them. It wasn't a full endorsement, but it was enough. People raised their glasses. Not everyone, but enough. Pemberton sat down heavily, looking like he'd swallowed poison. Cressida's expression had gone carefully neutral, but Elin could see the calculation behind her eyes. This wasn't the public humiliation she'd planned. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of careful conversations and strategic positioning. People approached Elin, some curious, some hostile, some genuinely interested in her services. She collected names, made mental notes, built connections one conversation at a time. By the time the gala ended, she was exhausted but victorious. Outside, waiting for her carriage, Rowan found her. That was either brilliant or suicidal, he said. Which do you think? I think you just announced to everyone in Greymont that you're not going away, that you're building something permanent, that attacks you in the margins. You attack back at the center. Is that bad? It's dangerous, but it's also exactly what you needed to do. He studied her in the lamplight. You're not the same person who walked through that wrong door 2 months ago. No, I'm not. Do you regret it? Any of it? Elin thought about her old life, the careful smallness, the constant apologies, the fear of taking up too much space. Not even a little. 3 days later, the formal complaint started. Anonymous accusations sent to the city's business licensing board. Claims that Elin's consulting business violated ethical standards, that she manipulated clients, that her information sources were illegal. Cressida's counterattack, systematic, thorough, designed to strangle the business through bureaucracy. Elin met with Rowan and Maggie to strategize. They're trying to make you defend yourself, Maggie said. Force you to spend time and resources proving legitimacy while your business suffers. So we don't defend, Elin said. We attack. With what? Elin pulled out a file she'd been building for weeks. Information on every person who'd filed a complaint, their business practices, their ethical violations, their own manipulations and shortcuts. With evidence that everyone in this city plays the same games. The only difference is I'm honest about it. We release this publicly. Show that the people attacking me are no different. They just want to eliminate competition. Not that scorched earth, Rowan said. You burn those bridges, they stay burned. Good. I'm tired of building bridges to people who set them on fire anyway. They released the information through carefully chosen channels. By the next morning, the complaints had been withdrawn. The accusers were too busy defending their own practices to continue attacking Elin's. But the victory came with a cost. She'd made more enemies, burned more relationships, pushed herself further outside the traditional power structure. And then something unexpected happened. People started defending her. Lord Carr gave an interview to Greymont's Society papers, praising her professionalism and effectiveness. 3 merchant families published a joint letter supporting her business practices. Even the Duchess of Ashmont made a carefully worded statement about the value of innovative approaches to traditional social challenges. Elin's office was flooded with new client requests. People who'd been watching from the sidelines, waiting to see if she'd survive, now wanted to work with her. Within a week, she had more business than she could handle alone. You need to expand, Maggie said, reviewing the client list. Hire assistants, build infrastructure, turn this from a one-person operation into something sustainable. I don't know how to build that. So learn, the same way you learned everything else, quickly and under pressure. Elin hired 3 assistants, young people from backgrounds like hers who understood being underestimated. She developed training systems, created processes for gathering and verifying information, built the business into something that could survive without her constant attention. 2 months after the Winter Gala, Elin Varell's consulting firm was the most talked about business in Greymont. Not the most prestigious, not the most traditional, but the most effective. And effectiveness, it turned out, bought respect, even from people who'd initially despised her. The letter arrived on a Tuesday morning. Heavy paper, familiar handwriting. Elin opened it carefully. Miss Varell, I underestimated you. That rarely happens. Congratulations on your success. I imagine you think this means you've won. You haven't, but you've earned a temporary truce. I have other concerns currently that demand my attention. Your business may continue unmolested. For now. Consider this professional courtesy from one power broker to another. CV Elin read it 3 times. Then she folded it carefully and placed it in her desk drawer. Not a surrender. Not friendship. But acknowledgement. She'd survived. More than survived. She'd built something real from nothing but intelligence and desperation and refusing to apologize for existing. That evening, she met Rowan at his estate. He was in his study, as usual, surrounded by papers and maps. Cressida sent you a truce letter, he said without looking up. How did you know? She sent me one too, suggesting we've both made our points and further conflict would be wasteful. Very practical of her. Do you trust it? Not even slightly, but I think she's being honest about having other priorities. Her brother's debts are worse than we thought. She's been forced to liquidate assets, focus on survival rather than revenge. So I won. You survived. There's a difference. He finally looked up. But yes, in the way that matters, you won. Elin sat in the chair across from him, the same chair she'd occupied that first day when everything seemed impossible. Now it felt like hers. What happens now? She asked. Now you decide who you want to be. The business is established. You've proven yourself. You could consolidate, play it safe, maintain what you've built. Or you keep pushing. Use this foundation to reach higher, build real power, become someone who doesn't just survive in this system but changes it. That sounds exhausting. It is, but I don't think you're the kind of person who stops at safe. He was right. She wasn't. The next morning, Elin received an invitation to join the Greymont Commerce Council, an advisory body that influenced city business policy, the first person without inherited wealth or noble title to be offered membership. She accepted. That afternoon, 3 more noble families requested her services. Not quietly, publicly, making it clear they valued her expertise. And that evening, Rowan asked her to dinner, not as a strategic meeting, just dinner. I don't understand, Elin said when he extended the invitation. Neither do I, entirely. But I'd like to spend time with you when neither of us is fighting for survival. See what that's like. That sounds dangerously close to friendship. Or something else entirely, which is terrifying for someone who spent years avoiding anything that complicated. He met her eyes. But you've taught me something about fighting for things that matter. So, dinner? Elin felt something shift in her chest. Something that had nothing to do with strategy or survival, and everything to do with the way he was looking at her. Yes, she said. Dinner. She walked home through streets that felt different now, familiar but transformed. Her city, her space, earned through intelligence and courage and refusing to disappear when the world demanded it. In her pocket, Cressida's letter crinkled softly. Professional courtesy from one power broker to another. Not how she'd expected this story to end, but definitely how she'd earned it to begin. The dinner invitation sat on Elin's desk for 3 days before she let herself think about what it meant. Not strategy, not survival, just two people choosing to spend time together because they wanted to. The concept felt foreign, dangerous in a completely different way than anything she'd faced before. You're overthinking it, Maggie said, sprawled across the chair in Elin's office like she owned it. It's dinner, with a man who clearly finds you interesting, who you clearly find interesting. What's complicated about that? Everything. He's a duke. I'm a successful businesswoman who sits on the Commerce Council and has half of Greymont's elite seeking your services. Stop defining yourself by where you started. Define yourself by where you are. Elin stared at the client files spread across her desk. 43 active cases, 12 pending, a waiting list that stretched into next quarter. All of it built in 4 months from nothing but intelligence and desperation. Where I am is still precarious, she said. One wrong move and it all collapses. That's always true. For everyone. The difference is you've learned to move anyway. Maggie stood, straightening her skirts. Go to dinner. Let yourself have something that isn't about survival. You've earned it. After she left, Elin pulled out the acceptance letter she'd drafted and redrafted a dozen times. Simple. Direct. No excessive gratitude or false modesty. I accept. When and where? She sent it before she could second-guess herself again. The response came within an hour. Tomorrow, 7. My estate. Come hungry. The last 2 words made her smile despite herself. That night, lying in bed in the narrow room she'd occupied her entire life, Elin thought about the past 4 months, about wrong doors and right choices and the difference between surviving and living. She'd survived, built something sustainable, earned respect from people who'd initially dismissed her. But living? That was different. That required letting someone see past the armor, past the strategy, past the careful construction of competence that kept everyone at arm's length. It terrified her more than any of Cressida's attacks had. The next evening, Elin stood in front of her mirror wearing a dress she'd made herself, deep green with simple lines, elegant without trying too hard. Her mother had helped with the finishing, their hands moving in familiar rhythm. You look nervous, Iris observed. I am nervous. Because it's dinner with a duke, or because it's dinner with someone you actually care about? The question was too perceptive. Elin met her mother's eyes in the mirror. Both. Your father was nervous on our first real dinner, too. Hands shaking so badly he could barely hold his fork. I found it endearing. Iris's expression softened. You've fought so hard to build this life, Elin. Don't forget to actually live in it. Rowan's estate looked different at dusk. Softer somehow. Less fortress, more home. He met her at the door himself. No servants, no formality. Just him in simple dark clothes, looking almost uncertain. You came, he said. Did you think I wouldn't? I thought you might talk yourself out of it. You've been doing a lot of that lately. How do you know? Because I've been doing the same thing. The admission surprised her. Rowan never seemed uncertain about anything. He led her to a smaller dining room she hadn't seen before. Intimate. A table set for 2, wine already poured, food laid out simply, nothing excessive or performative. I had the kitchen prepare everything in advance, he explained. Sent the staff away for the evening. I thought we could use privacy. That's either very thoughtful or slightly ominous. Hopefully the former. He pulled out her chair. Though I'm not entirely sure how to do this. Dinner without strategy or agenda. It's been a while. Elin sat, feeling the same disorientation. We could pretend this is a business meeting, discuss client portfolios and social dynamics. We could, but that feels like a waste. Of what? Of finally having time to talk about things that actually matter. They started with safe topics, current events, city politics, the Commerce Council's latest proposals. But gradually, carefully, the conversation shifted deeper. "Tell me about your father," Rowan said. "Your mother mentioned him once, said you look like him when you're being stubborn." She would know. He was apparently very good at being stubborn. Elin sipped her wine. "He died when I was 2. Factory accident officially. But my mother once let slip that it was more complicated, that he'd been organizing workers, pushing for safety regulations, making the wrong people angry. And you think it wasn't an accident. I think accidents are convenient when someone becomes inconvenient, but I'll never know for certain. Is that why you fight? Because he did? Maybe, or maybe I just inherited his inability to accept injustice quietly." She met Rowan's eyes. "What about you? You said you lost someone, that you chose duty over what mattered. What did you lose?" His expression closed slightly. Then, deliberately, he relaxed it. "Her name was Clara, merchant's daughter, smart, funny, completely unsuitable by my family's standards. I was 23, convinced myself I had time to figure it out, to find a way to satisfy both duty and desire." "What happened?" "Cholera outbreak. She was helping nurse the sick in the lower quarters. Died within a week. I was at my family's estate, attending social obligations I didn't even care about. By the time I heard, she was already gone." The pain in his voice was old but not healed. Elin reached across the table, touching his hand briefly. "I'm sorry. So am I. Every day." He turned his hand, catching hers. "After that, I stopped pretending duty mattered more than truth. I became the wolf of the North, the difficult duke who refused to play by the rules. It made me lonely, but at least it was honest. Until I walked through the wrong door. Until you walked through the wrong door and reminded me that loneliness isn't the same as strength, that maybe fighting for something or someone is worth the risk." The words hung between them, heavy with implications neither seemed ready to fully address. "This is terrifying," Elin said quietly. "Completely. We barely know each other. We've spent 4 months learning how each other thinks, fights, survives. That's more than most people learn in years. That's not the same as knowing if this, whatever this is, could work. No, but it's a start." Rowan's thumb traced circles on her palm. "I'm not asking for promises, Elin. I'm asking for possibility. For time to see what this could be without strategy or calculation. Just us." Elin looked at their joined hands, at this man who'd protected her, challenged her, helped her become someone powerful enough to stand on her own. "Okay," she said. "Possibility." They talked until late into the night, about dreams and fears and the strange paths that had brought them to this moment. It felt like discovering a country she'd never known existed, one where vulnerability wasn't weakness and honesty didn't require armor. When Rowan's carriage finally took her home, Elin felt lighter and more terrified than she'd been in months. The next morning shattered that fragile peace. Elin arrived at her office to find Thomas waiting, his face pale and frightened in a way that made her stomach drop. "They took Mother," he said. "Who took her?" "What are you talking about?" "Men, debt collectors. They said she owes money, a lot of money. They took her to debtor's holding until it's paid." But the world tilted. "That's impossible. We don't have any debts. I paid everything. It's new debt from last week. They have documents, signatures, everything official." Elin's blood went cold. Cressida. It had to be Cressida. The truce letter had been a lie. Or bait. Or both. She grabbed her files, scanning for anything that could help. "How much?" 8,000 crowns. The number was impossible. Deliberately impossible. More than Elin could raise even with her business's success. Where did they take her? Merchants Row, the holding facility. Elin, they said if we don't pay within 3 days, they transfer her to provincial prison. She could be there for years. Elin's mind raced. This wasn't just an attack on her mother. This was an attack on everything Elin had built. A demonstration that despite her success, she was still vulnerable. Still someone who could be destroyed through the people she loved. She sent Thomas home with promises to fix it, then immediately went to Rowan's estate. He was in a meeting but dismissed everyone when he saw her face. What happened? She told him. Everything. The impossible debt. Her mother's arrest. The 3-day deadline. Cressida, he said immediately. She's been quiet too long. I should have anticipated this. Can you help? Do you have 8,000 crowns? Yes. I can have it transferred within the hour. Relief flooded through her, then died when she saw his expression. But I won't, he continued. What? If I pay this, it establishes a pattern. You become someone who needs rescuing, someone whose enemies can attack through family because they know I'll cover the damage. It destroys everything you've built, makes you dependent rather than powerful. My mother is in debtor's prison. I know, and I know how that sounds, but think, Elin, strategically. If you let me solve this, what does it prove? That I have resources, support, that you can't stand on your own, that attacking your family is effective. Cressida will do this again and again, until you break or until you become so dependent on my protection that you're no longer your own person. Elin wanted to scream, to throw something, to make him understand that this wasn't about strategy, this was about her mother. But he was right. She hated that he was right. Then what do I do? Her voice cracked. I can't raise 8,000 crowns in 3 days. I don't have that kind of liquidity. No, but you have something more valuable. Information, leverage, connections. Rowan pulled out paper and began writing names. These people owe you. These people fear you. These people need your continued goodwill. You call in every favor, every debt, every piece of leverage you've accumulated. You make them understand that helping you now is an investment in future protection. That's extortion. That's power, the kind you've been building whether you admitted it or not. He met her eyes. I will help, but not with money, with strategy, with introductions, with making sure the right people understand the situation. But the solution has to come from you, from what you've built, or none of this matters. Elin stared at the list of names. 47 people. Her network. Her carefully constructed web of connections and obligations. If this doesn't work, it will work. Because you're better at this than anyone I've ever met, including me. She wanted to believe him. Needed to believe him. Okay, she said, help me build the plan. They worked for hours, identifying who could provide what, who owed favors, who could be leveraged, who would respond to appeals versus threats versus mutual benefit. By evening, Elin had a strategy. Brutal, comprehensive, requiring her to use every tool she'd learned and several she was inventing on the spot. The first stop was Lord Carr. He owed her everything, his position, his marriage, his current comfortable life. I need 2,000 crowns, she said without preamble, by tomorrow morning, as repayment for services rendered. He hesitated only briefly before agreeing. Done. 3 merchant families who'd used her services to break into social circles, 1,000 each. Payments were promised by end of day. Lady Morrison, whose daughter's engagement Elin had facilitated, 500 crowns plus introductions to 2 other potential donors. By midnight, she had 6,000 crowns committed. She still needed 2,000 more. That's when she did something desperate, something she'd sworn she wouldn't do. She went to Cressida. The Vale mansion was dark except for a few lit windows. Elin knocked on the servants' entrance knowing Cressida would be awake. Women like her rarely slept when enemies were vulnerable. A butler tried to turn her away. Elin pushed past him. Tell Lady Vale I'm here to negotiate. Alone. Cressida received her in a study that smelled of roses and calculation. She looked unsurprised. Miss Varell, how predictable. You fabricated debt against my mother. Why? Because you needed to remember your place. You've built something impressive, but you're still a seamstress's daughter playing at power. I wanted to remind you what that means. It means I know how to survive, how to fight, how to turn disadvantage into advantage. Elin stepped closer. You're struggling, Cressida. Your brother's debts are worse than anyone knows. Your own finances are stretched. You're embezzling from family accounts just to maintain appearances. I could destroy you with one well-placed conversation. As could I. That's called stalemate. No, that's called mutual destruction. which benefits neither of us. Elin pulled out papers, the information Rowan had gathered months ago, everything they'd held in reserve. I'll give you this, all of it, every piece of evidence I have on your vulnerabilities. Let you destroy it, remove the threat permanently. Cressida's eyes narrowed. In exchange for? Release my mother, cancel the debt, leave my family alone permanently. That's all? You're not asking for peace between us? No, I don't trust peace with you, but I'm asking for boundaries. My family is off limits. In exchange, I never use this information. We continue our professional rivalry without dragging innocent people into it. Cressida studied the papers. Elin could see her calculating, weighing risks, measuring costs. And the 2,000 crowns you still need? Cressida asked. I'll find them elsewhere. No, you won't, not in time. Cressida set the papers aside. I'll cancel the debt, release your mother, and I'll give you the 2,000 crowns you need to make your demonstration of independent power complete. Why? Because I'm tired of this. Because destroying you has become more expensive than tolerating you. Because you've proven you belong in this world, even if I hate admitting it. Cressida's smile was cold but genuine. And because I respect enemies more than I respect sycophants. You've earned my respect. That means something. Does this mean? It means we stop actively destroying each other. It doesn't mean we're friends. It doesn't mean I won't compete with you or block your advancement when it benefits me. It just means we fight like professionals rather than like children. Elin felt something unknot in her chest. Not trust, not friendship, but something like mutual recognition. Done, she said. By morning, her mother was released. The fabricated debt disappeared from official records, and Elin had 8,000 crowns ready to present, never needing to use them, but having them available proved the point Rowan had insisted mattered. She could stand on her own, could protect what mattered without being rescued. A week later, the Commerce Council held its quarterly meeting. Elin attended as the newest member, still adjusting to sitting at tables where decisions affecting thousands were made casually over wine and pastries. The discussion turned to business licensing reforms. Specifically, regulations that would make it harder for new businesses, particularly those run by people without family wealth, to establish themselves. We need to maintain standards, Lord Pemberton argued, prevent unqualified individuals from exploiting desperate clients. It was aimed at her. Everyone knew it was aimed at her. Elin waited until he finished. Then she spoke. I agree we need standards, but let's be specific about what we're protecting. Are we protecting clients from exploitation, or are we protecting established businesses from competition? That's a false dichotomy, someone said. Is it? Because the proposed regulations would have prevented my business from forming, would have kept Lord Carr from finding his position, would have stopped 3 merchant families from achieving social advancement their money and effort earned. The only people these regulations protect are those already established, those who don't want new players challenging their monopolies. You're oversimplifying. I'm being honest, which is apparently oversimplifying in this context. She pulled out documentation. I've prepared an alternative proposal, one that establishes real standards, verified client satisfaction, transparent pricing, demonstrated results, without artificially limiting who can enter the market. Standards based on performance rather than pedigree. The room went quiet as she distributed copies. Several council members scanned the document with obvious surprise. The Duke of Ashmont, who chaired the council, looked up. This is remarkably thorough. It's necessary. If we're going to regulate, let's regulate based on what actually protects people rather than what protects existing power structures. The vote was close, but Elin's proposal passed. Walking out of that meeting, she felt something shift. Not victory exactly. More like arrival, like she'd finally proven she belonged in rooms where decisions were made. That evening, she met Rowan at a small restaurant neither of them had chosen for strategic reasons, just because the food was good and the atmosphere was quiet. You're changing things, he said over dinner, actually changing them, not just surviving in the system, but forcing the system to evolve. Small changes, incremental. That's how real change happens. One precedent at a time. One person proving it's possible. He reached across the table, taking her hand. I'm proud of you. The words hit harder than she expected. Thank you. I'm also terrified for you. The higher you rise, the more dangerous the enemies. But I'm learning to trust that you can handle it. I'm learning to trust that too. They'd been seeing each other regularly for 3 weeks now. Carefully. Privately. Not hiding exactly, but not performing their relationship for public consumption. How long do we keep this quiet? Elin asked. As long as you need. I won't pressure. That's not what I'm asking. I'm asking when you want to make this public. Official. Rowan went very still. Are you sure? No, but I'm tired of making decisions based on being sure. I'd rather make them based on what I want. And what do you want? You, publicly, permanently, in whatever form that takes. He smiled, that rare, genuine smile that transformed his face. That's the best terrible idea you've had yet. I have excellent terrible ideas. It's my specialty. I've noticed. The announcement came a week later, not through gossip or speculation, through official channels. Duke Rowan Hale formally declaring his intention to court Miss Elin Varell, with all the rights and protections that entailed. The reaction was exactly as explosive as expected. Support from unexpected quarters, merchants who saw possibility in the precedent, minor nobility who'd benefited from Elin's services, younger aristocrats tired of rigid hierarchies. Opposition from predictable sources, traditional families horrified by the breach of protocol, older nobility convinced society was collapsing, people who'd built their identity on maintaining social boundaries. But the Duke of Ashmont's public endorsement shifted everything. When the most powerful man in Greymont openly approved, opposition became social suicide rather than social currency. Cressida sent a note. Congratulations on your continued ascension. Try not to destroy everything our ancestors built. CV Elin sent back. I'll only destroy the parts that deserve it. EV. 6 months after walking through the wrong door, Elin stood in Rowan's estate. Her estate now, technically, though she still kept her office in the city, and looked at the woman in the mirror. She wore midnight blue. Not borrowed. Not armor. Just a dress she liked on a body she'd learned to inhabit with confidence rather than apology. Her mother sat nearby, making final adjustments to the hem, with the practiced efficiency of 30 years' experience. How do you feel? Iris asked. Terrified, exhilarated, like I'm about to do something irreversible. You are. That's what marriage means. Is that what this is? Marriage? The ceremony planned for this evening was deliberately ambiguous. Part traditional wedding, part political alliance, part public declaration that the rules had changed. It's whatever you make it. Same as everything else you've built. Thomas appeared in the doorway, looking uncomfortable in formal clothes. They're ready, whenever you are. The ceremony took place in Rowan's garden, witnessed by 200 carefully selected guests. People who mattered, people who'd helped, people who represented the world they were building rather than the one they were leaving behind. Rowan waited at the end of a flower-lined path, looking like violence wrapped in devotion. Elin walked toward him alone. No one to give her away because she'd never belonged to anyone else. The words they'd written themselves felt both ancient and revolutionary, promises of partnership rather than possession, commitment without ownership. Love acknowledged, but not weaponized. When it was done, when rings were exchanged and vows were spoken, Rowan kissed her like he was claiming and cherishing simultaneously. The crowd erupted in applause and whispers and the sound of rules being rewritten. At the reception, Maggie cornered Elin with champagne and delighted chaos. You did it! You actually did it! Married a duke, changed the social order, proved everyone wrong. She raised her glass. I'm taking partial credit for the entertainment value. You can have it. None of this would have worked without you. I know, but it's nice to hear you say it. Cressida appeared briefly, appropriate for appearances, distant enough to maintain boundaries. Congratulations, Duchess. I'm keeping my name, Elin said, and my business. Of course you are. You wouldn't be you otherwise. Cressida's smile was almost genuine. We'll never be friends, but I'm glad you exist. You make everything more interesting. Likewise. Later, when the guests had gone and the night had settled into something quiet and private, Elin and Rowan stood on the terrace overlooking Greymont. "Any regrets?" he asked. "Hundreds, but none about this." "Same." He pulled her closer. "What happens now?" "Now we build something new. A household that operates on different principles. A marriage that reflects who we actually are rather than who society expects. A life that makes sense to us even if it confuses everyone else." "Ambitious." "I don't know how to be anything else anymore." "Good. I'd hate to be married to someone boring." Elin laughed, surprised by joy in a way she'd never expected to feel. "Do you think we'll actually pull this off? Making this work? Changing things?" "I think if anyone can, it's us. We're both too stubborn to accept failure." "That's not exactly a romantic assessment." "No, but it's honest, which is better." Below them, Greymont spread across the landscape like a promise. Her city, her world. No longer a place she had to fight to belong in, but a place she was actively reshaping. The wrong door had led to this, to power and partnership in a life she'd never imagined possible. Sometimes, Elin thought, the best destinations are the ones you stumble into while trying to find your way. And sometimes the greatest courage is accepting that you deserve the space you've claimed. Not because someone gave it to you, but because you built it yourself from intelligence and desperation and refusing to apologize for existing. She'd started as a seamstress's daughter who made one wrong turn. She'd become someone who made her own doors and walked through them deliberately. And that, more than any title or wealth or social position, was the victory that mattered. The story could end here, with marriage and success and hard-won happiness. But Elin Varell had never been someone who settled for endings when beginnings were possible. So instead of resting, she kept building, kept pushing, kept proving that the rules were made by people and could be unmade by people brave enough to try. And in the years that followed, Greymont would discover that having a duchess who refused to forget where she came from, who used her power to create opportunities rather than defend privileges, changed everything. Not overnight, not perfectly, but persistently, permanently. One wrong door at a time.